The moment I saw the big house on the hill with the red door, I had to have it. My husband thought I was crazy. He said the door was ugly and the lawn care would be a nightmare because of the hills and all the trees strategically planted all around the yard. But I had to have it, and I stood firm on my decision. And I will admit, my husband was right. That house ended up being more than we bargained for, but not because it was on a hill and there were trees in the yard. The buying process went smoothly, maybe a little too smoothly. I thought I was dreaming. It was our first home, and we had just gotten married and taken our dream honeymoon in Japan. Now we were buying our first home and planning to have children. The house was 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and had a small garage and half an acre of land. It was a great starter home. The only history we were given on the home was that it was a gift from a husband to his wife for their 25th wedding anniversary. He designed it based off of everything she had told him over the years about her dream home. I didn't know at the time that the realtor was only giving us half-truths. He gave us that beautiful story, knowing we were newlyweds. He said, "Well, now, I have to disclose that there was an accident on the property, but it really doesn't affect anything. One of the construction workers collapsed on the job and passed away on his way to the hospital." Of course, we didn't think too much of it. It's not like the guy died in the house by the hands of someone else or something dark like that. What we didn't know is that the realtor was leaving out far more than he was telling us. We moved in at the end of August, and the weather was perfect for moving. It wasn't too hot, but it wasn't getting cold yet either. I paused to sit on the porch swing and imagined myself rocking a baby while sipping on a coffee, a year or two down the road. I could see our entire lives in this house. There would be plenty of room for grandkids to stay years down the road. Unpacking wasn't even a chore. I was enjoying taking the time to carefully place each item in its new permanent resting place. I was absolutely over the moon. I can remember the first incident like it just happened yesterday, and it's been 32 years. I was walking down the upstairs hallway with a giant pile of linens in my arms to place in the linen closet outside the bathroom. It was mid-afternoon, so the sun was streaming in through the beautiful stained glass windows at each end of the hallway, and I briefly stopped to admire the beauty. I heard what I thought was an animal up in the attic. It sounded almost like nails scraping across the floor. I can't explain why, but I felt the need to go check, even though I knew I couldn't do anything to get rid of an animal myself. I pulled the staircase down and checked to make sure it was sturdy enough to hold me. It felt safe enough to handle all 115 pounds of me, so I proceeded to head up. The sun was shining through the attic window, gleaming on an old rocking chair to the left. At first I didn't catch it, but a few seconds later, when I looked that way again, I noticed the rocking chair was slightly moving. Of course, my first thought wasn't anything paranormal. I figured either the window was drafty, since it was probably 50 years old, or that an animal scurried across it. Seeing no animals in sight, I headed back down. I told my husband later when he got home from work that he might want to check it out. He said he'd start by just getting some mouse traps up. It was an old home and sat vacant for at least a couple of years before we bought it, and we were in a wooded area, so it was highly possible a few mice were living up there. About a week later, I was lying down to take a nap when our bathroom door started slowly opening. I was startled, but again, it could be easily explained away by the house shifting over time or a draft from the large bathroom window. It wasn't even an hour later, and I was woken by whispering in the hallway. It was the most unsettling experience. I was home alone, and it's not like cell phones existed back then, so I couldn't just grab my phone and call for help. In fact, we didn't even have a landline yet. The cable and phone were to be set up in a few days. I got out of bed as slowly as possible, hoping nothing would creak and give it away that I was awake. I managed to make it over to the door barefoot and placed my ear up against it. I couldn't make out what was being said, but there was definitely someone out there, at least one person. I finally got the courage to open the door, but when I peered out into the hallway, no one was there. It sounded like the whispers were coming from the bedroom next to ours, so I tiptoed down that way. I peeked into the room, but again, no one. The whispering stopped a few seconds later, like someone spotted me and didn't want me to hear what was being talked about. I had chills. The hairs on the back of my neck were standing up, and I felt like I was interrupting something, so I stepped backwards away from the room. I went downstairs to make myself some tea and to rationalize this one. I couldn't, so I began to wonder if I was hearing a ghost. I wasn't totally convinced that ghosts were real, but I wasn't totally against the notion either. All week, the rocking chair in the attic kept crossing my mind. I felt a pull towards it. So one afternoon, I grabbed a glass of sweet tea and headed up there with a book. Maybe it could be my little reading spot, away from everyone and everything. I was about a chapter in, rocking at a good pace, when I felt a force behind me. It's almost like something was pushing the rocking chair, and my pace began to pick up. The energy I was feeling wasn't unsettling. It felt more sad than anything. Suddenly, whatever was rocking my chair put a hand on my shoulder. I jumped up and screamed, my iced tea falling to the floor and glass shattering. I had never in my life felt so terrified, but still so sad. I was about to bend down to start picking up glass when I noticed a small chest in the corner of the other side of the room. I'd never seen it before. I was always drawn straight to this side with the rocking chair. Now I was being drawn towards the chest. I can't explain what it was, other than someone or something was compelling me to the tiny chest. It was dark brown and clearly worn. There was a tiny lock on the front clasp, and it said the name Jane on it. I had to go downstairs to get the broom anyway, so I brought the chest down with me to see if I could pry it open. The lock was clearly very old, so I had a good chance. It only took a few pushes of a butter knife before the lock popped open. I took a few breaths, almost afraid to know what was inside. As I opened it and rifled through, I was confused at first. It contained a few newspaper clippings, one titled, "Husband slays wife and unborn child before going out to dinner." There were a few bracelets and a small locket charm on a rope chain. The locket had two pictures, one of a woman about my age, and one of what must be the woman's baby picture. There were a few other trinkets, like a crystal Christmas ornament that said baby's first Christmas, and a little teddy bear. As I began reading the article, I realized it was about this house. That was my address. It read, "Sunday, December 6th, a woman was discovered deceased in her attic of her home when her best friend reported she didn't show to a scheduled dinner with her husband. The pair were supposed to have dinner with her best friend and her husband, but only a husband showed up. The best friend became concerned due to the husband acting suspicious, and she excused herself to the restroom and ran to the home. The woman was 22 years old and 24 weeks pregnant with her first child. The name of the victim will not be released until all of her immediate family is notified. Her husband was arrested without incident and remains in jail." I nearly fainted as I was reading. I started piecing everything together. I wasn't going crazy. There was someone in the house, but it wasn't a living person. I believed the spirit of the young woman and her unborn baby were lingering in the house. After explaining it all to my husband and spending a few hours convincing him I didn't need to go to the psych ward, we contacted someone who could come over and hopefully help the mom and baby cross over. Since then, we didn't hear or see anything. I'm honored she trusted me enough to lead me to her story, and I still think about her often. I really hope she found peace. See, if I heard whispers, I would immediately think my depression medication was making me hear things, or that I'd finally snapped. But in all seriousness, I'm glad this one had a happy ending. Or at least that she seems to have been able to cross over. Do you have a paranormal story to tell for an upcoming video? Email it to the address in the description below. Don't forget to like and share. And with that, see you tomorrow, friends.